Unit 5, page 3. Aim. How do vaccines give us immunity? The objectives of today's notes will be to describe the importance of antibody production and explain how vaccines are used to develop immunity. Let's try to answer the do now question. How do antibodies function? So you should remember this from pages 1 and 2 about the immune system and immunity. If you're not sure, take a moment now and look back. How do antibodies function? Okay. Well, hopefully you remember that antibodies are created by the body. They're actually made by your white blood cells in your immune system, and they respond to things called antigens. Remember that antigens are part of the pathogen, and they're on the surface of the cell membrane. So they have a specific shape that matches an antibody, and the antibody is basically like a flag saying, hey, over here, white blood cell, you can destroy this pathogen. So now let's talk about immunity. Specifically today, we're going to talk about vaccines. So how do we develop immunity? Well, when a pathogen enters our body, the immune response is activated and the white blood cells produce these antibodies that we just spoke about. Remember that they have to have a matching shape to the antigen. That shaped antibody remains in your body long term, sometimes even lifelong, and gives you immunity against the pathogen. So notice on the pictures, you see the cell membrane, the nucleus, there's lymphocyte. This is a white blood cell. Okay, that's what lymphocyte is. And it's creating antibodies. Those are these green-shaped kind of, or green-colored Y-shaped structures. Notice that on the end of each of them has a specific shape. In this case, it's almost like a little V. That antibody will go and actually attach itself to the antigen. Remember that this molecule is a pathogen. It could be a bacterium, could be a virus, a fungus, a number of different things. And on its surface are different shaped proteins on the cell membrane that actually have a specific antibody that matches to it in order to destroy. So what's in a vaccine? Because we talk about vaccines a lot of times, especially around flu season, but vaccines can have a number of different things inside of them. So more often than not, it's a weakened or dead microbe. So it's a virus that's either weakened or dead, or it's actually antigens from that microbe that are inserted into the body through a number of different ways, and they're used to stimulate the immune response. The reason that they're weakened or dead is really to cause you not to get sick full swing. So they want you just to develop a little bit of sickness so your body says, oh, I need to make antibodies. You can see on the picture in the bottom, the blue is the vaccine. You can see the little white Y's creating antibodies, and they're matching with the antigens to destroy. So vaccines are used to trigger the immune response and basically develop antibodies. Anytime a vaccine is given to a person, the body's response will be to start making antibodies as soon as possible. So remember, a vaccine contains antigens from that pathogen or a weakened version of the pathogen, but regardless, the body's responding to the antigen. Remember, that's just the protein on the surface right here of the actual pathogen. Okay. So again, there's only enough to stimulate the antibody production. It's not actually enough to make a person really, really sick, although some people will kind of suffer from a little bit of sickness after they get a shot, especially like a flu shot. One last thing, and this isn't on your notes, but you should know the difference between passive and active immunity. So if you know from being a baby, you automatically get a little bit of immunity from your mother. And this happens by passing through the placenta. You'll get some antibodies. So some things a baby is protected from, certain diseases like mumps or measles, you get some antibodies from. But this is a very short period of time. So what happens is that babies at a relatively young age after they've lost that immunity, they need to get vaccinated to have long-term immunity. This long-term immunity is what we call active immunity. So active immunity you can get two different ways. You can either get it by having actually gotten sick from something, or from getting a vaccine from it. Now, of course, getting a vaccine is going to be much less dangerous than getting the full disease. So that's why babies are oftentimes go through the process of getting vaccinated. We're going to do a short video clip now of how this actually works in vaccinations for babies. Okay, so here is the animation about how vaccines work.
How vaccines work. Vaccines pack big protection into itty-bitty packages, and these guys mean business. Essentially, vaccines give your child's body a practice run in defending against real-world germs. There are 5 main ways that vaccines are made. Number 1, a live but weakened form of the disease is used. Number 2, an inactive form. Number 3, vaccines could use only part of a disease. Number 4, or just some deactivated disease toxins. And number 5, some vaccines use a much less dangerous wannabe version of a virus. But no matter how it was made, all vaccines have the same strategy. They initiate the creation of protective antibodies without actually making your child sick. These antibodies are kind of like the watchmen in your child's system. They're constantly on the lookout for any bad guys or diseases. So if and when they come across one, they sound the alarm for your child's body to go on the defense and attack the germ right away. In some cases, booster shots are then used as gentle reminders for your child's body to always stay on guard. The only other way to create protective antibodies is to actually get sick. But when your child becomes infected with a disease naturally, there's no telling its strength or how it will affect them. Vaccines are a safe, controlled way to build immunity. So in the future, if the real germ ever shows up, your child's body will recognize it and keep that shield of immunity up for his or her entire life. And when they're good, we're all good.
So that was a quick video of just how babies get vaccination, but adults also, or teenagers or elderly, also get vaccinations in the same way. They maybe don't get them as frequently or aren't as required as when you're a baby, but same way. So again, vaccines allow for active immunity so that your body can create those antibodies and protect you long term. Okay, so now let's go on to the summary on the next page. There are 4 questions for you. At this point, I want you to read through the questions and see if you can answer them on your own. If you can, that's a really good sign that you know what the content was in this video. If you're having a little bit of trouble, you might want to rewatch, go back to the beginning at this point. So go ahead and pause the video and answer your summary questions. Okay, so question 1. Hopefully you had time to answer all of these and you got them all perfectly right. How do vaccines give someone immunity? Well, vaccines allow the body to recognize an antigen, remember that's the shape on the surface of the pathogen, and create specific antibodies for that pathogen. Number 2, why might a vaccine make someone sick? Well, remember that a vaccine is made from weakened microbes, so someone could get sick if their immune system's weak. Oftentimes you'll hear about whenever you go in to get a flu shot, they'll ask if you're healthy, because they want to make sure that you are healthy so that the vaccine doesn't actually make you sick if you already have a weakened immune system. Also, careful with people who already have diseases, maybe someone with HIV, because they have a very weak immune system and they have to make sure that they're not going to make them very sick with the vaccine. Number 3, what are precautions that must be made when creating the vaccine? So obviously these are being given to lots and lots of people all over the world, so we want to make sure 2 things. First of all, we want to make sure that they're safe and they're not going to hurt people, and that they're effective. So we want to know, how much do we give a person? How long does the immunity actually take, right? If it takes a very long time, that might not be a very effective vaccine. We also want to know if it works before we give any vaccines to the general public. So doctors will go through many, many trials of different vaccines to make sure they are both safe and effective. And finally, question 4. Active immunity is developed by getting a vaccine or having this disease, and that can be long-lasting. However, passive immunity, when someone's given antibodies against a pathogen, isn't long-lasting. So why can't a person be given antibodies against a pathogen and develop long-term immunity? Well, only active immunity, when you either get sick naturally or through a vaccine, will allow you to have that long-term immunity and remember a pathogen. If it's passive immunity, like when you get antibodies from your mother, unfortunately, that's a very short term, and some diseases might last up to a year, but that's it. So that will only be, passive immunity will only be short term. The only way to get long-term immunity is through active immunity. If you have any questions about though, I would suggest rewatching it. Otherwise, review your notes and make sure that you are ready for the next day of class.